I did get into, buying a guitar and or wanting to be in a band because I wanted to be on stage and the girls would look at me and hopefully by then I would have lost some weight, which is part of the strategy at the time, become more appealing, and and but I didn't even know there was a music industry. Who knew?
Yeah.
All I wanted to do is play music, be in a rock band, and be liked by girls. That's it. Very simple.
Not much more to it.
And
Right.
later on, you find out, oh, wait a minute, we have to write original material. And remember, a lot of the times in the 60s, a lot of the bands and the Beatles broke that rule. A lot of bands did not write their own songs. Some bands did not even record their own music. Like let's say the Monkees. Yeah, they would sing on the record, but rarely would they play on it. They had studio musicians, come in and do that, which was basically the norm back in the 60s. So it wasn't until like the 70s that musicians, as a rule, had to really play at a studio level, the studio musician level. For example, you have Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page. He was a studio musician before he put Led Zeppelin together. Actually, Led Zeppelin is a continuation of the Yardbirds,
Yeah.
the last version of the band. And then John Paul Jones, the same thing. He was an arranger and studio musician. He would conduct bands in the studio. But these guys who were actually rockers, but they knew, they were very versed in music theory and composition and understood what the elements necessary to make a hit record.
What was the process of promoting it? Obviously we didn't have Apple Music, we didn't have YouTube. Like, talk about the footwork that was really put in. Having to go to the studio, record it, get a demo.
Big difference today
Big
now.
difference.
Well, yeah, to promote. I mean, that's more. Okay, back in the day, what it was, for example, in the 70s, the Randy Rhoads era of the band recorded a couple of records for Japan, only for the Sony label in Japan, and they were not available in the United States or anywhere else in the world, just Japan. That's why when our record came out in the United States, it entered eventually the Billboard charts 40 years ago, which is when the album Mental Health came out. There might have been some foreign charts, but nobody really cared about that because you would make this. All the bands wanted to tour America. That's where it was so big, so massive, so many places to play at, so many radio stations,
Right.
so many promoters, so many clubs, so many venues, theaters, and all of that. So that was the market that all the British bands, they just wanted to come in and just like they wanted to rule that market, like the Stones eventually did, and then the Beatles in the 60s and so on, Led Zeppelin, you know. Uh, so Quiet Riot, because the Japanese versions, those Japanese recordings were never even made. It had nothing to do with Billboard. That's why we. Some people say, well, Mental Health is your third record. Well, not really, according to U.S. market, because it never existed in the United States, and that's what we go by. Billboard magazine. So by November of 1983, it became the first debut by a metal band to reach number one. There were many number one metal records before that. So yeah, and it's only due to the fact that 40 years ago, Billboard did not recognize any of those foreign territories.